It's what I should always have done. I shouldn't have become involved in cinema. That's for fools. Gardening is central because, I mean, gardening, you know, one is entering into another time, into eternals and returns and cycles. Those are the resurrectional cycles in my life.
I first came to Dungeness with Derek in 1986. He fell in love with the place instantly and soon moved here and started his garden. In the last year of his life, he wrote about the garden, how it had developed and how it affected him.
Dungeness, Dungeness, your beauty is the best. Forget the hills and valleys. This landscape is like the face you overlook, the face of an angel with a naughty smile. There is very little to interrupt you here, just the wind, which, like the mistral, can drive you slightly mad. When I came to Dungeness in the mid-80s, I had no thought of building a garden. It looked impossible. Shingle with no soil supported a sparse vegetation.
When Derek first moved to Prospect Cottage, there were 2 beds in front of the house, surrounded by bricks. He started pulling out the bricks and replacing them with elongated flints that you find on the beach at low tide. He thought they were like dragon's teeth. And eventually this became a motif for the garden. The garden at the front of the house is very formal, while the one at the back is much less formal, much more random. But the front is perfectly symmetrical if you look at it. It's mirrored a lot in Derek's movies, where symmetry plays quite an important part in some of his frames.
At the back, I planted a dog rose. Then I found a curious piece of driftwood and used this and one of the necklaces of stones that I hung on the wall to stake the rose. The garden had begun.
Derek would often go down on the beach for his morning walk and come back and say, I found something really fantastic, and be so heavy that it would take 3 or 4 of us to drag it up the beach and put it in the garden. He never really had any concept of size. There's some fantastic pieces of wood here and some other things, bits of old groins, the bottoms chopped off old groins and turned upside down and stuck in. Radar reflectors from boats. Some bits of lens that we dug up in the garden. Somehow they got there. I guess someone smashed one once and just left it there, just dug it in.
At first, people thought I was building a garden for magical purposes, a white witch out to get the nuclear power station. It did have magic, the magic of surprise. I saw it as a therapy and a pharmacopoeia. I collected more driftwood and stones and put them in. I dug small holes, almost impossible as the shingle rolled back so that 2 spadefuls became 1, and filled them with manure from the farm up the road. The plants were just plonked in and left to take their chances in the winds of Dungeness.
The garden was always a very important place to Derek, and he'd come down here, even when he was very ill in Bart's Hospital, he'd say, can I have portable oxygen? I must go to the garden. And in the last year of his life, the nearer he got to death, the more important the garden became to him.
I can look at one plant for an hour. This brings me great peace. I stand motionless and stare.
Derek introduced Californian poppies for colour. They're a bit of a pest, and I have to keep weeding them out all the time to stop them spreading everywhere. There are some other poppies here, an indigenous poppy, Flavium glaucum, the yellow horn poppy, which is very beautiful. Irises are an incredible success here, and you wouldn't expect it being so near the sea. I suppose they're like the baking heat that we sometimes get in the summer. If anyone was thinking of starting a garden by the seaside, I'd suggest they did what Derek did, and that was look at other people's gardens and see what's growing, and look at the indigenous plants and try and adapt them for their own use. Things that do really well here are mainly the silver leaf plants. Santolina and Helichrysum, which are clipped by the wind and form circles around some of the sculptures. Rue does really well here too. It's quite silvery. Things like the sea kale with its incredible purple leaves in the spring, beautiful white flowers, and fantastic bone white seed pods.
Sea kale, Crambe maritima, is the Ness's most distinguished plant. There are more of them here than anywhere in England. They come up between the boats. Both kinds of sea kale are magical. The cordifolia are extraordinary, with flowers 8 foot high.
When I read the text that Derek had written for the garden book, I was quite surprised to find that he intended to plant the squares by the side of the house with cranberry. Because they have taproots, you can't transplant them, so I've planted some seeds to realise that ambition. Because Dungeness is a site of special scientific interest, you're not actually allowed to import soil. Derek put some old railway sleepers into squares and made some soil by using garden cuttings and straw. And one of them is a vegetable garden, the other area is a herb garden, which now encloses the beehive, which is originally further down the garden. It was a bit too bleak for them. I don't think they enjoyed it too much, but now they're very happy. I don't believe too much in using poisons in the garden because of the lizards and birds that live here. So I get a lot of problems with snails, and after a rainstorm at night, go with a torch and a bucket. It's the Dungeness way. Black fly, I get a few of those, and green fly, but I'm hoping for a ladybird population explosion. And rabbits, there used to be quite a lot of a rabbit problem here, but now there's a fox population, so the rabbits are kept down. The whole idea of the garden is about evolution, that it has to change the whole time. We couldn't fix it at a certain date and say, this is how the garden will stay forever. You have to decide what that date might be, like a year before Derek died, the day Derek died, whatever. And the garden has, in fact, improved a lot since Derek died, because I spent so much time looking after him in the last year of his life that the garden was a bit left to get to rack and ruin. And since then, it's been weeded extensively and extended a little bit. After Derek died, the whole garden was imbued with this notion of death. And in that year, 2 small birds made a nest in the elder by the kitchen. And it changed for me the whole meaning of the garden, from being about sadness to being about life and regeneration.
The word paradise is derived from the ancient Persian, a green place. Paradise haunts gardens, and some gardens are paradises. Mine is one of them.